On the other hand, Paul opened one of the rare bottles of Moutai aging. Seeing Charlie and Claire walking down, he smiled and asked Charlie, "Mr. Charlie, would you like to have 2 glasses?" Charlie smiled slightly and said, "Okay, then I will have 2 drinks with you." Claire on the side reminded in a low voice, "Aren't you going to find your friends after dinner? Or don't drink, you can't drive after drinking." Charlie smiled and said, "It's okay. I'll take a taxi after I finish drinking." It's the first time Mr. Paul came to the house. It's impossible to not drink 2 drinks with him. Hearing this, Claire nodded and said, "Okay, as long as you don't drive anymore." At this time, Jacob walked out of the kitchen with a pot of beef soup, and saw Claire. He smiled and said, "Oh, Claire, try your aunt's craftsmanship later. I just stole it." After eating 2 bites, I can tell you this, just 3 words, it is great. Claire had no appetite for food at all now. Not to mention that the meal was made by her mother's rival in love back then, so she didn't want to eat it even more. But because of face, she could only sit down at the table. At this time, Mei Ching took off her apron and walked out of the kitchen with the bowls and chopsticks. Seeing that Charlie and Claire were both down, she smiled slightly and said, "I'm sorry, I made you wait for a long time. Time to eat." Then, she asked Charlie and Claire with concern, "You two must be hungry? Come on, move your chopsticks. The table is full of home-cooked dishes of varying taste made by Mei Ching. There are zaihakuyu, braised prawns in oil, dompo meat, fish head tofu, fried shrimp eel and so on. These dishes are really beautiful, and they are not much less than professional restaurants." Mei Ching said with some regret, "I originally had a longjing shrimp that I was better at, but I was too busy in the kitchen just now, so I didn't care about it all at once, and it's mashed up, so I can only make it for you next time." When talking about the longjing shrimp paste pot, Mei Ching thought of the scene where Jacob suddenly hugged herself in the kitchen. 2 red clouds appeared on her beautiful face. Seeing the food Mei Ching made, Charlie couldn't help but appetite, but out of politeness, he didn't feel ashamed to use his chopsticks directly. Instead he took out a bottle of drink and poured it for the 2 ladies. Later, he picked up the wine glass and said with a smile, "Aunt and Paul, welcome you back to China, welcome you back to Orus Hill, and welcome you to our home as a guest. Let's have a drink together." Jacob also hurriedly echoed, "That's it, I'll take the wind and dust for you, let's have a drink together." Mei Ching picked up a drink and said sincerely, "I really appreciate your hospitality. I didn't expect to be able to have a home-cooked meal at my old classmate's house on the first day of returning to Orus Hill. Thank you very much." Jacob smiled and said, "Mei Ching, we have been old classmates for so many years, what are you doing so politely for this little thing?" After that, he said, "Furthermore, this table of food today is all your credit. I'm just battling it out. I'm very embarrassed about it. How can any old classmates come here as guests and cook it herself?" Mei Ching smiled and said, "What's so embarrassing about this? I said it at first, I will cook today." Charlie smiled and said, "Come on, let's dry this first glass of wine first." Everyone picked up their wine glasses and drinks. The 3 men drank all the wine in the small wine cup, and the 2 ladies took their drinks and took a sip. Claire's expression was slightly indifferent, but she can't be blamed. After all, she has also tried her best to express her kindness to Mei Ching. Mei Ching is also very clear in her heart that Claire must have an opinion on herself, so she also deliberately flattered her, and smiled and said to Claire, "Claire, first try the braised prawns cooked by Auntie. See if it suits your taste." With that said, Mei Ching took the initiative to pick up a prawn for her and handed it to her bowl. Claire was somewhat embarrassed. After all, this woman was her father's first love back then. Now she is sitting in her own home and picking food for her. This feeling is always a bit wrong. However, she nodded very kindly, and said softly, "Thank you, Aunt." Having said that, she also tasted the braised prawns. Unexpectedly, the taste of this shrimp made her amazed at the entrance. Well, Claire has eaten this dish of braised prawns more than once, but she has never tasted such a good one. The braised prawns cooked by Mei-Ching have moderate sweet and salty taste, tangy aroma, and good flavor. Claire was even more amazed in her heart. This aunt is really not an ordinary woman. Not only does she have a good temperament and a good image, she even cooks so deliciously. She recalled the meals her mother had cooked. There was only one adjective that could describe it, which was hard to swallow. Compared with Mei-Ching's cooking skills, it was almost every day. More importantly, her mother never seeks improvement in cooking. What was the taste of cooking more than 20 years ago, it still tastes that cooking now. Later, after she married Charlie and Charlie was in charge of cooking, her life was much better. However, although Charlie's cooking is good, it's still far behind Mei-Ching.